My association with Rotary clubs goes back to the beginning of my career. I recall that the first time I spoke at a public event after joining the IAS was to the Rotary Club of Parvatipura, where I was posted there as sub-collector. I'm very happy to reconnect with the Rotary clubs of Twin Cities on this very memorable occasion of celebrating our 71st Independence Day. Of course, I've been associated with Ftapcci. All along, I served in this state, both in the APIDC and the APSFC, and I used to very actively interact with Ftapcci, as it was then called. So I'm happy to renew my association with this very dynamic industry and trade association. So thank you for inviting me to this joint meeting. When I suggested a few topics to the organizing committee, they suggested that I talk about a more broad-based topic like growth in India. So I thought I'll talk about will the elephant start dancing? We clocked growth of 7.9% the year before last. Last year, growth was 7.1% in spite of demonetization. This year, most estimates are that the economy will grow at 7.3%. For a few months after demonetization, we were worried that we lost the title of the fastest growing large economy in the world, but within a few weeks, we regained that status. So India's current macro situation is quite promising. Growth is trending up, inflation is trending down, rupee is stable, public finances are being repaired. If you look at the political economy situation also, we have a government that commands a rock-solid majority in the parliament that inspires confidence about economic management. We have a central bank that commands credibility. We have the ruling party in the center, the BJP, which controls states which together account for more than 65% of the nation's GDP. The government is pushing through some important structural reforms. So, in a world where advanced economy, if you look around the world today, advanced economies are struggling with low growth and deflation. Other emerging markets are struggling with their own idiosyncratic problems. India is a country that has great promise of growth, macroeconomic stability. Again, if you look around the world, rich countries today, they're worried about secular stagnation, demographic decline. India is contrarian because we're going to grow, there's promise of growth, there's promise of stability, and there's promise, most importantly, of a demographic dividend that I'll talk about. There's something called BRICS, many of you perhaps know. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. We're the only country among BRICS countries to have made a credible adjustment on the external front over the last 5 years. If you look at development experience over the last 70 years, in Asia, there have been several growth miracles. First, there was the Japanese miracle, some of you might recall. In the 80s, in the 70s and 80s, Japan dazzled the world with its growth performance. Books were being written, PhDs were being earned, conferences were being held to understand why Japan was growing so rapidly, the Japanese miracle. That was followed in the 80s by the East Asian miracle. Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Korea, when they showed amazing growth performance. Then the second series of East Asian miracles, that's Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And then, of course, over the last 20-25 years, China, which has clocked double-digit growth year on year on a trot. So with all these miracles, today people are saying, is an Indian miracle in the offing? Is it India's turn today? You know, people have metaphors for growth. East Asians were tigers. The second series of East Asians were cubs. China was a dragon. India is compared to an elephant. An elephant is a very strong animal, a lot of stamina. Doesn't dance very often, but when it starts dancing, it can go on and on forever. So is there the tantalizing prospect of the elephant starting to dance? However, I don't want to exaggerate the India growth promise. There's nothing inevitable that India will grow at 7 or 8% or 9% or will remain the fastest growing large economy in the world. Today, we're growing at 7+%, but that growth has a very narrow base. It's coming from consumption, private consumption, and government expenditure. There is no investment taking place. Exports are quite muted. Inflation is low, but inflation is low because of low oil prices and low food prices, and low food prices because of a good monsoon. Rupee is steady, of course, but rupee is steady because of FII inflows. The most important worry for us today is that investment is not taking place. Remember, in 2008, also some of you referred to the global financial crisis. Even at that time, before the global financial crisis, we clocked growth of 9+% for about 5 years before that. So we thought we were on a roll. We were on an unstoppable growth momentum. And people started writing about how India is joining the global A-listers, whether this is the beginning of an India century, India will rival and challenge China. But all that unraveled with the global financial crisis. So there is nothing inevitable about the India growth story. I'm sure all of you have seen the economic survey, read about the economic survey that was presented to the Parliament last week. What the economic survey said was that in a situation where you have such low real investment, low export volume, low credit growth, you cannot sustain 7+% growth. So if you ask me, give a one-word answer to what should be done to get India to continue to grow, I would say investment. Get investment going. Because if you look at growth rate and investment, you'll find a very strong correlation. When we grew at 9+% before the global financial crisis from 2003 to 2008, there was very high investment. Again, after the crisis, growth dropped because investment dropped. Today, there is no investment taking place. So unless investment is jacked up, it is difficult to accelerate growth. All around the world, countries are concerned about lack of demand. In Japan, in Europe, in America, there is no demand. India is very unique because there is enormous amount of demand here. We're a supply-constrained economy. We're not able to produce enough. All that 1.2 billion people in the country demand. So we need to produce more, we need to invest more. So one-word answer is investment. But there are no one-word answers to real-world problems. So I would say we need to increase investment, but we also need to make that investment productive, make that investment efficient. So two things we need to do: increase investment, improve productivity.